All right, everyone. So today we'll be going over interest and compound interest. One of the first ones we're going to start off with is simple interest, just because I know this one and the compound interest were both problems that many of you had in the most recent assignment. And it is one that I know you will all be seeing in your midterm and your final as well. So if you're given a problem that's asking you to find the simple interest, then it's good to remember this formula here. We're going to have I is equal to P times R times T. And the P is your principal, the R is your rate, and the T is your time. So in a problem, and we'll be doing this one, it's going to ask you to solve to find the simple interest when your principal. So let's write this down. We have the principal that is 2208. You have your rate that is at 9%. And you have your time, which is 18 months. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind as you're doing these problems, because though you can just plug in, or you think you may just be able to plug in many of these numbers here, for example, your P, so look at that, your P here, you can plug that into your principal, of course, your R here, and your T, right? The thing to keep in mind is that anytime you have a percentage like this, you first must divide that by 100, and you're going to be getting 0.09. Because again, we have to convert our percentages into decimals. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is when you're looking at months or time here, we're going to go based off years. So here, we know that if we have 18 months, then we're going to get about 1.5 years, because we're keeping our time in years. So now we can go ahead and add all these numbers to our formula. So again, when we're looking at this here, we're going to say, okay, I is equal to our principal, which is 2208. And we can put these in parentheses to note that we're going to multiply 0.09 and finally 1.5. And once we calculate this, again, you can multiply as you go, or you can just use a calculator to help you out. And we're going to be given a rate of 298 with 8 cents. And that is how you would go ahead and get that answer. And again, it makes it pretty easy when you're doing this on an exam, because you're going to be given, you're going to be shown a possibility of 4 answers. So again, you want to make sure that this here is part of those. Now let's move on to your compound interest, as I know this is another problem that many of you have had. So let's look at compound interest. Now here, again, just like with simple interest, we want to make sure we have our formula set up, right? So for this one here, we're going to look at our amount is equal to our principal, and we're going to look at our rate over n. We have n and t. So again, just like before, we're looking at this problem. Anytime you see compound interest, you want to make sure that this is what you use here. And your A is your amount. And this is what we're looking for. Again, your P here is your principal. We have your R, which again is your rate. You have your T with time. And when we're looking at your N, that's the variable that can change depending on what you're looking for here. So for example, we're looking at our N. It can be, if you're like, for example, if you're given a compounded interest, it might say daily, it might say quarterly, anything like that, that's what goes in your N. So for example, let's look at this part here. Or let's look at this problem. We're going to find the total amount in the compound interest account. And this is what we're given. We're given a principal amount, let's go here, we're given a principal amount of 5,700, and it's compounded daily at a rate of 6%. So we got our rate, which is 6%. And then we have that for 10 years. So again, our time here is 10 years. Now, in some of these questions, it might do one of two things. You're going to see it like this, and it's going to be, of course, written out in a small sentence. It'll tell you find the total amount of the compound interest account. $5,700 is compounded daily at a rate of 6% for 10 years. If you just have that, then you can use the formula to help you out and solve that. So let's put that in. So we can go ahead and, again, rewrite this now with the numbers that we have. And we can say, okay, well, our P here is going to be 5,700. Keep the 1 here, plus the R over N. So our R, again, is going to be 0.06% over our N. Now, if you remember, it says is compounded daily. So when you see daily, that's going to be 365 because there's 365 days in the year. And then again, up here with our other ends, 365 times t, which is 10. And this is what we would put together to get our answer. Now, if you were to be given something like quarterly, then versus the 365, that would be a 4. And if it's yearly, then you know that's a 1. But for now, for this question, we're going to stick to 365 as it's asking daily. And we can look for our answer there. The easier part, and you will see this in some of your exams, where it will tell you the compound interest factor. If it gives you the compound interest factor, then the good news is that when you are looking at this portion here, and let's actually bring this down. So when you're only looking at this portion of this equation, just that without the P, this is your compound interest factor. And the cool thing is that if it already tells you in the question, hey, this is your compound interest factor, and if it says the compound interest factor is 1.82203, then we know that, hey, if that is the compound interest factor, then all I need to do is multiply the P to that and I get my answer. And if I want to multiply the P, then guess what else I can do? Just solve that. So I can say 5,700 times 1.82203. And again, you can use a calculator. If I'm going to multiply 5,700 times 1.82203, I'm going to get an answer of, okay, let's do this, 10385.57. Again, so here would be my answer. And again, there's multiple ways you can solve it, and it's not hard if you know where you're going to be plugging in these options here. So like I said, if you remember that for compound interest, you have this formula right here. And for your simple interest, you can see, okay, well, we have interest is equal to principal times rate times time. It makes it a lot easier as you're given the information. And again, the nice part is that a lot of your questions, especially in exams, will tell you in parentheses, the compound interest factor, whatever it is. Then that just means you can skip having to do all this part here and just multiply your principal times to whatever value is given for that compound interest factor, and you'll get the answer. Just remember that whatever your calculations are, that you just have 2 decimal places here, because again, we are dealing with money, and then you should be good. And again, as you're doing these problems, you're, especially during an exam or during some of your assignments, you're generally given with about 4 options. And if you don't see your answer or you don't see your outcome, then you're probably doing something wrong. So double check that your your percentages have been properly converted into a decimal, that everything you've done is correct, because it does happen at times where we make those mistakes and we happen to forget a number or anything. So keep that in mind. But I hope those two help or will help you with solving these issues or any of these problems that you encounter that deal with interest at any time. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to always reach us out for any math help at math@cnicollege.edu, and we'll do our best to help you out. Thank you.